Hey, morning, Caroline. How are you?
Good. Thank you so much for having me on today.
Caroline, you are very welcome. And indeed, welcome to the NI Business Podcast. Caroline, could you tell me a little about yourself, your background, and your businesses, please?
Of course, my name is Caroline McKenna. I am originally from Newcastle, County Down. I'm 34 years old and I started out as a teacher. I graduated from St Mary's University College in Belfast. And as I left college, there were no job opportunities here. So I decided to take the leap and move to Australia. I love traveling, and I just planned on being there for 6 months to just have a bit of fun before going out into the real world. And I stumbled across an amazing school out there. It was a private girls' school overlooking the Sydney Opera House. And fast forward 7 years later, I was an Australian citizen living the dream out there. I started to record my life out there because it's such an amazing life. And I was just showing what a day in the life looked like as a teacher. That started to generate a bit of interest online, and some people said to me, you should start your own podcast. You're really good at talking online about the highs and lows of living abroad. So I decided during the pandemic, when we were all locked up at home in our lovely apartments in Sydney, it wasn't as bad as it was here, to do a podcast. I had no experience in podcasting, but I just bought a $30 mic off Amazon. My students showed me how to use GarageBand on my Mac, and I recorded a 15-minute episode about living in Australia as an Irish professional and what that looked like, the highs and lows. And I recorded it, uploaded it, and put the laptop away and thought, thank God no one will ever hear that, because it was like reading my diary entry. And within the week, the podcast had blown up all over the world. I had listeners from South America. I had people listening from there was UK, New York, Africa. It was crazy. People all over the world listening, and that became known as a County Down Under. I was working full time as a teacher alongside just generating this as a hobby. And I realized after a couple of years of doing this while in Australia, people assumed I was making money off the kind of things that I was doing. I was doing like boat parties for people living abroad. I created an ebook for anybody wanting to move to Australia with lots of tips. But I was just doing it as a hobby. And I think the Irish person in me was like, oh God, no, I can't be seen to be making money, so I better not do that. And then when I realized people thought I was making money anyways, I thought, well, I may as well start. And that was really the start of my business. I retired as a teacher 2 years ago because a county down under was generating such an amazing income that life was good. I wanted to use that flexibility of being my own boss to give home a go. I flew home to Ireland nearly 2.5 years ago now, just to spend time with my family because I'd been away. And with the pandemic, I was locked away for 3 years. I couldn't get back into the country. So I came home here just to be at home, do some videos online. But as time went on, Peter, I just felt like I'm used to being a teacher, working with kids. I felt like I'd lost value in who I was and what I was doing. I was just recording videos, making a lot of money online, doing makeup tutorials and day in my life, but there was no value at the end of my day. I felt a bit useless, and I thought I want to get back into the education system, but not the way I was before. My biggest frustration with the education system as a teacher of 10 years was there was not enough emphasis on mental health. It was kind of like a an add-on to the timetable fortnightly where the kids would go to one class a fortnight and talk about their feelings, and that made them in turn kind of not interested in it. So I
Mhm.
wanted mental health education to be like brushing your teeth. It was something that was done every day. So I created Nurturing Minds, and that is based in Caswellan. It is nearly 2 years old, and the students come in primary and secondary after school from 5 to 18 years old, and they learn maths and English. It's tutoring essentially, but with every lesson, they start their lesson off with mental health strategies and education around coping with their mental health. So that they don't get to our age and try and undo all the bad things we've done to ourselves with our mind. And that's going really, really well. But I just see opportunities here, and I'm very into my fitness, mental health, traveling, the Australian lifestyle. And I'd seen a window of opportunity in the Pilates industry. I'm not qualified. Well, I am now qualified as a Pilates instructor, but when I looked into it, I was looking at it from a business perspective of this is a really good business model here. I see it blowing up here. I've seen in Australia how that is longevity. It's not like a Zumba class that's going to run out of a trend. This
Mhm.
is investing in your health, and post-pandemic, Irish people, people from all of the UK are spending more money on their health. They're not going out as much. The nightclub industry's really shut down. So I took a leap of faith and opened Alara Pilates 3 months ago, and it is booming. Or like the Nurturing Minds was a slow burner, but this is very much straight away a very successful business. And now I'm just trying to hope and pray that everything continues to run down the line. So that's in a nutshell where I'm at on a Tuesday at 34.
And so it started off with teaching,
Yeah.
then which you retired from now, which is great. That's pretty cool, retiring at 34. I like that. And then that grew into County Down Under, which is still going, Nurturing Minds, and most recently Alara Pilates. So if you think about your business journey, what would you say has been your biggest lesson along the way?
Probably the biggest lesson for me, Peter, is that I tried to do everything at once. I wanted to just cater for everybody that had an opinion or every customer that came my way. If they said you should put on a lunchtime class, for example, in Alara Pilates, I would just instantly put it on. Instead of kind of looking at, do we need to put that on? With Nurturing Minds, I was trying to be the mental health hub to begin with. And it was very interesting. After the first year, business was good. We were breaking even, but it wasn't popping off. And it was only that I took a step back and looked at even the name. That's probably one thing I've learned as you'll see as the businesses go along. We've gone from a county down under, Nurturing Minds, to a four-letter word, Ilara. These big, like, tongue twisters, it doesn't really mean anybody knows what it is. So Nurturing Minds was on the wall. Nobody knew it was a tutoring center. It just looked like a mental health facility for children. And we're still very taboo about mental health. We're getting there, we're getting better, but doesn't mean necessarily a parent wants to send their child to Nurturing Minds. So we made a few shifts because I was like, what's going on? Why there's shooters are in demand? Why are we not getting where we need to get to? And we changed the sign to tutoring center, 5 to 18 years old, very basic, and then Nurturing Minds on the side. And the center was at full capacity within a couple of weeks. So I've realized that I was trying to be the be all and end all, doing everything. In Nurturing Minds, we were trying to do Halloween arts and crafts and wreath making classes for parents and all of this stuff that wasn't actually generating any income. So, in a long way about what I've realized is do one thing and do it well. So I'm not trying to look at my competitors and say, oh, they did a paint and sip in their Pilates studio. I need to do that. And you do get caught up in it and think maybe I should be doing more. But I try and keep tunnel vision and think, just do Pilates, do it well, do tutoring, do it well, and grow from there.
Yeah, it's such a great share. It reminds me, I read a story recently about Jeff Bezos, and he talked about businesses going wrong where they become almost competitor obsessed instead of customer obsessed. And that really resonated with me there. So there you go. You've been linked with Jeff Bezos. That can't be
I
a
actually
bad start to the day.
he'd said something the other day, and I thought, oh, that makes me feel better. That Amazon, I think it made a loss for the first 8 years, but he knew where it was going. And I thought, right, well, if he said that, then we're all right. We get
There's,
there. You forget about the growth of any business.
there's a famous clip that I don't know if you've seen it or not, but where he is on I think it was the Jay Leno show in America, almost being laughed at. So Jay Leno was saying, "Oh, so you've been in business and you're making all this loss, etc., etc." And the audience are laughing at it. It's a real. I'll dig it out and send it to you.
Yeah, I'd love to see that.
Fascinating. So, sort of, what you've learned that around the business. What about yourself, Caroline? What have you learned about yourself along the way?
I've definitely throughout the years, I'm now 5 years into the start of a county down under and being a business owner. There's a lot of things I've learned. Number one probably is you can't take anything personal in business, but that is also the hardest lesson. And every day you still get a wee, oh, I didn't like that they said that, but they were giving me feedback on my business, not as me as a person. That would be the biggest thing. I think the other biggest lesson is I need to be always working on the business, not in the business. As soon as I stepped away from being the tutor, being the Pilates instructor, being constantly on the social media side of things with a county down under, I was able to grow the business and grow it very rapidly. That can be hard at times. To not, I feel like you should always be close by and hovering over and making sure you know what's going on. But I don't think there is a lot of value in 3 or 4 years being behind the counter. If you're wanting to grow your business, if you're happy with it being a small business and it doing well, then I get it. But my plans are to grow this into an empire, and I've learned that I'm serving no value to anybody by being there tutoring a child on a Monday evening, 5 to 8 p.m. Yes, that child gets value, but the business is not going where it needs to get to. That would be a huge thing. And one thing that I've learned along the way is there's no friends in business. You have to be very careful whenever, especially in a local town, when you know, your friends are your customers, you have to treat them like a customer. You can't be giving discounts here and, oh, here, knock a pound off that, or here, take that one, because you'd not make any money. Like, you become a very caring and giving charity. So it's been awkward in that sense, but I've learned to get some systems in place where they're not actually dealing with me. It's they get an invoice. So it's taken away that personal side of things. So there's been a lot of lessons along the way, and the biggest one being thick skin.
Yeah, great share. And what about uh, influencing you? Who's influenced you the most along your journey?
I've had a lot of people influence me. Probably my parents would be my biggest influencers. In both ways, because they kind of tell me what not to do in business. They've just retired. My mum's just turned 70, and my dad is 65. He both just retired from owning their own company that they slaved and slogged at for 30 years, and it was recently bought over by another catering company, something they only ever dreamed of, but they're only starting to live their life now. So they've taught me to try and not get to that age and start living, to call it a night. I've seen my parents and witnessed many's a nights where every conversation at the dinner table was business with them. I'd be going to bed and dad would still be up at 11 p.m. trying to start into the work for tomorrow to
Mhm.
try and overcome the mountain load of work that he had. But the truth was it never stopped. So it was kind of being at peace with saying we're calling it a night. But they've been my biggest influences, and they're amazing in business decisions and helping me because they understand. But the world has changed since even just they've retired. I'm dealing with a totally different business in social media where they have no
Mhm.
understanding of and the power of social media for advertising businesses, especially the kind of businesses that I'm in with the Pilates. It's very social media orientated. Um, so we're learning together and discussing those things. But they would be my biggest influences and inspirations. I'm also really, in terms of people that are well known, um, I really, and he's very controversial, but I love looking at the likes of Elon Musk and Grace Beverly, who is from the UK, who's built a brand from business organizations, business courses to a gym brand. I like to see people do one thing and then do it really well and then expand it into an empire. So I love looking at people like that. George Heaton's another one. Young people, because sometimes you see the likes of Jeff in Amazon and you think, yeah, but he's at a certain age. Is he relatable to me? But there's a lot of upcoming entrepreneurs that are around my age. George Heaton started off with a clothing brand in the UK, selling t-shirts to his mates, and he named his brand Represent, which is now a global company all over the world. He lives in LA, drives a Bentley, and I think, God, if he can do it, so can I. So I love to find people very relatable.
And what is it that gets you out of bed in the morning, Caroline, and really drives your passion for business?
My biggest thing is always my why. I always have to come back to that because you can kind of lose focus when you do own a business. You can start to think of the money and you can start to think of the status, and your ego can get in the way at times where you think I need to be seen to be doing well. I always have to really check in with myself at the end of every night and say, have I done the best I can today? Did I make an impact on someone's life? And that's why I do like to be close by to my companies where I see the customers coming in, because you can lose your love for the actual purpose of opening your business. And it was only when I was in the tutoring center last night and I was working with a child due to a staffing issue. And the whole day I was going, bloody hell, I have to go into tutor and I have to do this and I have to do that. And then I sat with a child and worked through what she was struggling with. And I got
Mm.
this real sense of like warmth in my heart. And I was like, oh, that's unlocked an emotion I haven't had in a long time because I've been stuck in the admin and the taxes and end of year accounts. So
Mm.
I always come back to my why. But that's what gets me out of bed in the morning. And yeah, I mean, I set my alarm for 5 o'clock. I'm one of those ones. I always have been one of those ones where if I have those few hours in the morning, I can be anyone's for the rest of the day. I can serve the community and the customers if I just get my cup filled in the morning.
And what's the biggest challenge that you're currently facing in business?
Biggest challenge, truthfully, is staffing. Post pandemic, I find that the world has changed. The generations have changed. Like when I was growing up, I worked in a bakery at 12 because that's just you just got a part-time job at the weekends. It was the best thing I ever did. I worked in the Strand Bakery in Newcastle. I made £16 a day, and that was for 9, 10 hour days, so less than £2 an hour. And I worked and learned how to, be on your hands and knees and scrubbing and dealing with customers and learning to talk to people at that age. And I loved it, but I don't know if I could work to that extent now. I find that the way that the world is going, people are more inclined to see how you can make easy money. And maybe I am a hypocrite in that way, in that I have my social media and I can see that you don't need to work to make money. You don't need to physically get out of the house.
Mm.
So I'm finding that staff, they don't like, for the likes of the tutoring center, they're like, can I tutor online? And my center, the one of the values is it's a technology free zone. I'm trying to look after the mental health of these kids who may be going home and sitting in front of an iPad all day or sat in their phones all day in between classes. And I don't see any value. Yes, the overheads would be a lot cheaper. I wouldn't have to pay rent if we did online, but it doesn't sit well with my values. People don't want to work for less than a certain amount of money. They want fixed contracts. They want this. There's no real, I see where you're going with your brand, and I love that idea. Now, don't get me wrong, there's definitely people out there. They're just very hard to find. At the moment for me, I mean, I've been trying to take on new employees throughout the years in all of my companies, and they seem great until they don't, or they don't show up, or they just cancel last minute, or the likes of things that I'm getting now is I've had a better offer. I'm leaving next Monday. There's no real loyalty to I'll stay as I'll give you my notice. So that's what I'm finding truthfully around here. And just being in a physical business in Northern Ireland, the government make it really hard to own a successful company because the costs of rates, national insurance contributions, insurance, rent, it's just going up and up and up. But the customer, there's no inflation in the cost of living, in terms of people aren't getting higher salaries, but the cost of living's going up. So people don't have as disposable income, and you're trying to provide a service, making sure you're fair for your customer. But at some point you need to earn money in what you're doing. So that would be the two biggest challenges.
Okay. And what if you could, let's go off piste, if you could invite any three people to a dinner party, who are you going to invite?
I was thinking of this one. I'd seen the question come through, and I was like, who would I want? Um, I think definitely I would love to invite like one of the dragons. I'm really into Dragon's Den. I've always been a fan of Dragon's Den since I was a kid. Um, Probably. I like Steve Bartlett now. I know he's for the younger ones, but he definitely understands the world of social media and the power of marketing. Definitely Grace Beverly, who I've spoken about before. I've seen her make millions, and I would actually pick someone local. There's a man local. I'll not name his name because he probably wouldn't want to be named, but I see local people in the background building businesses and empires in different areas. And, one minute he's opening a cafe, then he's opening a restaurant. And, he came from a building background, but he's opening all these different, very successful businesses. And I'm like, he's just boom, 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 and like building houses. And I'm like, I'd love to speak to someone like that because I feel like sometimes people assume that you have to know your industry inside out in order to own a business in that industry. And when I started the Pilates, I did get a bit of slack online from the Pilates community and Pilates instructors of what does she know, or she's in everything but the kitchen sink. So I like and respect people that just go for a feeling and make something out of it.
And if you could go back in time, back to 5 years ago, say, and give some advice to well, no, tell a lie. If you could go right back to your 18-year-old self and you could give some advice to your 18, what would you have been doing? Would you have been studying to be a teacher, possibly,
Yeah.
or graduating? So what if you could go back in time, what advice would you give?
The advice I probably give to my students now, which is nothing's permanent. I think we've been prone to evolve into get a degree and that's your career for the rest of your life and stay in that career. The best thing I ever did was to move to Australia and see that even if you were to stay in your career for your whole life, um, staying in the one school or the one job that you're in for the rest of your life is actually really unhealthy. And I know you probably had it in your school as well growing up. Some of those teachers were there for 45 years, and that was just, you got a job and you were lucky and you stayed with it. It's important to change things up. And my biggest advice is, choosing to step away from your career or something that no longer serves you doesn't make you a failure. You can actually use all of your experience in that to build something greater. This was never on my cards to be a business owner, and everything that I've done throughout my life has led me to this point. Failure is feedback. Everything, every mistake, every wrong decision I've made was actually taking me on the path to where I am. So I would just say to young people now, it's okay if your parents are telling you to go to university and you don't want to go to university, you can still become a millionaire without, you might become a millionaire quicker than with the bloody student loans. So that would be the big thing I would say is nothing's permanent. And we're starting to understand that especially in the country now that we're in, that it's okay to not be a teacher or a doctor for the rest of your life. If you choose to become a Pilates instructor or a yoga teacher tomorrow, you might get a few looks, but the world's changing.
You're so right, and I feel that was particularly in Northern Ireland. That was it certainly was a big thing, but becoming less so now, and for the better, in my humble opinion. So instead of let's look forward. So 5 years down the line, do what does your businesses look like then?
My goal since starting my businesses was always somebody once said to me, start to create your exit plan as soon as you open. Um, I always think I would like to sell on. It doesn't necessarily mean I want to retire in 5 years' time from being a business owner, but I am creating these businesses and an empire to one day sell. I want to have the freedom to enjoy my life. I'm working extremely hard now, knowing that this is not permanent for me. Like this is temporary to set me up for the rest of my life. So I'm trying to build building blocks for a very happy life. And I'll probably go on to open something else. But my 5 year plan is always to sell. So I'm building on that to have an exit plan, whether that becomes something I've always looked at is becoming a franchise with Nurturing Minds, especially. I think I'll open another couple of Pilates studios just myself, but Nurturing Minds is something I would like to franchise out. And I did actually get through 5 rounds with Dragon's Den to pitch that idea to Dragon's Den. And then I was called to Manchester for the to speak with the dragons, which I was so delighted about. But I actually, on top of everything else, I climbed to Everest Base Camp in April for suicide prevention, and the the screenings of Dragons Den fell at the same time. So I was like, maybe next year I'll get my chance with the Dragons and be able to franchise out. So bigger and better, but also having more quality of life.
And yeah, that nails it there. And if somebody wants to or would like to reach out and get in touch with you or any of the businesses, what's the best way for them to go about that?
Probably the best way is to get me through social media or LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn. You can find me Caroline McKenna or a County Down Under. That's my best protocol because all the different inboxes and emails, I might never see it.
Oh, fantastic. Well, Caroline McKenna from A County Down Under, Nurturing Minds, and Alara Pilates, thank you so much for sharing your story. And what a great story. You've packed a lot in at 34, so well done. And I wish you every success with your businesses and with your life for the rest of this year and beyond. So, Caroline, thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me.